Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go. All right.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our rally to the Abolish the Gang Database. The NYPD Gang Database puts residents at risk of heightened and more frequent police interactions, hyper social media surveillance, and racial profiling. Once labeled a gang member, people are also at risk of being included in complex conspiracy and RICO prosecutions based on guilt by association. We, the Gangs Coalition, are working on city and state level legislation that will abolish the racist entity and decrease the targeting of our black and brown youth by law enforcement. Over the next couple of hours, you will hear from a variety of speakers, including politicians, community activists, and impacted individuals. We hope the information and testimonies you hear today will push you to support our movement. Thank you.
Yeah, we're here. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database has got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database has got to go.
For our first speaker, we will have Robert Willis. Robert Willis is a Justice Advocacy Coordinator with Latino Justice.
Yeah!
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Robert Willis, Justice Advocacy Coordinator for Latino Justice. And we just want to speak to the randomness of people being placed on the gang database. It doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason as to what criminal activity may get you put on a gang database. In our communities, so many people get put on the gang database just for living day to day, coming and going in our communities, and get labeled as gang members because the police have decided that the area by which they live in is gang affiliated and controlled.
Tell the truth.
All right, thank you. So what winds up happening is the gang database is totally arbitrary, it's subjective, and it is based on how a police officer may feel when he wakes up in the morning. We have uncovered evidence of people being placed on the gang database for having traffic stops in an area that they have no affiliation with and are just driving through, and to later be determined that it was found out that the officer felt because they had no affiliation with the area, that's why it must have been gang related, their presence in the area. There are individuals who self-identify as gang members, crew members, and there are gang members who participate in criminal activity. But you can't just arbitrarily criminalize whole communities, and in our cases, the majority of our black and brown young men, simply because they fit a description that police feel justifies their abusive, harassing tactics that lead to no positive outcomes in our communities. And I just want to say this, you know, when black and brown men gather and form alliances for camaraderie and like-minded pursuits, they're considered gang members, and they're arbitrarily told that they're threats to community. Quite simple, when white men do it, they're considered militias and executing their constitutional rights. So just that racial dynamic unto itself makes any gang database punitive to our communities at large, and they should not exist. You know, and finally, the only real way that, you know, we can make inroads to any issues that relate to our communities is when the police work with us, those of us who have a vested interest in being community leaders and working on these systemic issues in our neighborhoods. This is the only time we can make any inroads into any gang violence or any gang activity. A database serves no purpose and is just arbitrarily punitive to large communities at whole. Thank you.
next speaker, we will have Knowledge. We will have Knowledge, Jelana, and Faith from our Red Hook Initiative Youth Organizer.
Hello everybody, my name is Knowledge. I'm a public safety organizer at a Red Hook Initiative in South Brooklyn. We group together with a lot of bodies to make the community a safer place for everyone to walk around and conduct their business as citizens. I'm here with my fellow public safety organizers, and we're here to talk about demolishing the gang database.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a half-time organizer. The other half-time, I spend being a creative director and artist. So over the last couple months, I've been noticing myself and other people in my group of artists being targeted through social media, and oftentimes in person, we're just pulled over and to the side and just basically harassed. And before I was connected with the Gangs Coalition, I had no idea that there was a gang database being added to on a daily basis. So I came out here just basically to scream out that this gang database needs to be abolished, or at least looked into publicly, and we need to get more bodies and more information about this out to the public, so that people that are in groups that aren't violent can remain safe and productive and not be scared off of the streets.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm going to pass it up to my public safety organizer, Pete.
Hi everyone, my name is Faith and I'm a part of the public safety team in RHI. The gang database is an unjust system that criminalizes black and brown people. No one knows who, if they're in it. You don't have to commit a crime to be in it. Just assume that you're in it and there's no opportunity to challenge or to be removed from it. The gangs database is an invasion of privacy and of human rights, essentially. There must be young people like us in the public safety team to speak out against the gangs database, because we are indicted into it at the young age of even 13. Knowing that wherever you go, you are seen as a criminal or a gangster is unjust, and it just doesn't feel right as a day-to-day. We aren't super predators, we aren't criminals, we are people.
Yeah.
We are mothers, we're fathers, we're students, just trying to get by day-to-day. And we want to let everyone know that we are educated and we're going to fight back against this system that criminalizes us. Woo! And the database now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next up, we're going to have another speaker from RHI, Jelana.
So my name is Tatiana. I'm a Red Hook resident, and I'm also 23 years old, and I'm a part of the public safety organizers at Red Hook Initiative. I'm also an MSW student at Adelphi University, and I'm a vocational therapist on the ACT team. And there are many social issues in my community that are detrimental to the residents of Red Hook. The residents of this neighborhood have been exposed to so much inadequate policing and unfair treatment, specifically the young adults living in the neighborhood with so much violence and gun violence that has spread to be somewhat normal. We don't need more policing or more gang databases. We need more education and more positive things to do in the neighborhood for young people, along with more job opportunities. The gang database has, The gang database exacerbates these opportunities because it leads to one of the many barriers that prevents young people from evolving, especially young people of color.
Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go.
For our next speaker, we're going to have Councilmember Tiffany Cabal.
Do I have to press a button? No? Nope. What's up, y'all? First of all, I want to extend gratitude to all the folks that are out here, especially the public safety organizers in the communities who are doing the work to bring real, actual safety to our communities. And I'm here today to join you in calling for the abolition of the gang database. Why? Because it is a tool in a failed toolbox as part of a system that is selling us false safety. Why? Because they are measuring safety by the wrong metrics. When you have systems of policing and prosecution and incarceration that measure safety by numbers of convictions, arrests, lengths of sentences, things like the gang database are what you get. Dragnets that pull in our black and brown young people, surveil them, over-police them, and set up risk to incarceration. Now, I want to speak very briefly on how this plays out in court, because before I was the council member in the 22nd District, I was a public defender trying to make sure that our kids, our people, didn't end up on Rikers Island. And so you have a system where kids, like we mentioned before, get on this list for wearing particular colors on a different day, for living in the same building as somebody else, for being on a block at a certain time of day, you name it. They don't know that they're on the database, and therefore there's no due process. They can't challenge it. They can't get their names off of this list. And so when I pick up a case of a young person, oftentimes what we'll see is that other young people on the gang database are used. They're used to coerce false confessions. They're used to snitch and make up stories to make cases to get convictions. That's not justice. That's not safety. And so by divesting from these failed tools and erasing things like the gang database, that is a step towards then reallocating our resources into building true safety in our communities. Encouraging gathering together and relationship building and camaraderie, and pairing that up with job opportunities, with recreation, with access to healthcare and mental health care, so that we have good, healthy communities and are doing more of the organizing like these beautiful folks here are doing. So I'm here to say that I'm proud to sponsor the bill to erase the database. We'll keep fighting until we get it done. Thank you.
The gang database got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go.
For our next speaker, we're going to have Vidal Guzman. Vidal Guzman is formerly gang affiliated and an organizer with Next 100.
How you doing, everybody? How you doing, everybody? That's the energy I like hearing. I first want to say thank you for everyone who's been here for the longest. It's not easy being here every single year, hearing the same stories of family members saying, when is the gang database gonna end? As someone like myself who was a former gang member, a member of the Bloods, and a high-ranking member of the Bloods, I live in a block that's Bloods, Crips, and Latin Kings. Let me tell you something. While we are at this old age of advocacy or looking for peace or looking for the ability to end violence, you got Ecuador and El Salvador who actually started legalizing their gangs and started working with the gang leaders to establish them as community groups so they can be able to get resources and attack the root at the cause.
Let's go. Speak on that.
This is not new. The gang database it's a useless tool. I'm someone who's been in the gang database before the gang database. I was in the gang book. I was someone who was on gang parole. We are in the level that police are using this fear tactic of saying when we do a gang raid, that's it, the violence ends. And let me tell you something, that is not true. That's right. I live in neighborhoods that certain housing complex was beefing for close to hundreds of years. You got kids who are growing up into being some of the part of these gangs. You got kids growing up in beef that don't even know how it even started. We live in a country right now that a lot of times the Bloods and the Crips don't even know how it even started in the first place. There's a generational issue when it comes to police telling us what it means, what we need. Majority of these police officers don't even live in our neighborhood. How are you telling us what resources we actually need when we're telling you what we need? That part. So what we're saying, and I gotta call my city council member and make sure she also sponsors his bills too, because how many times we gotta be here? How many times we gotta fall into this fear mongering that police keep using? Let me tell you something. As long as you black and brown, police is gonna keep watching you. Right. And the reason why I say that, because 2 years ago, I was one of the organizers that organized 200 protests in the civil unrest. And now we're waiting for stop to figure out who exactly, what organizer was being watched. So it didn't matter if we was protesting police brutality. It didn't matter if we're in our neighborhood. Police are watching us in any way possible. Right, it don't matter if we're doing good. It don't matter if we're doing the positive. Right. It don't matter if we're just walking down our neighborhood. Right. Do not believe what the police is saying when it comes to our community. Right. We're the one who live. We're the one who talk to our communities. And I tell you one thing, I live in a neighborhood that again are Bloods, Crips, and Lion Kings, and there's no beefs in my neighborhood. Wow. And you ask yourself why? Because we got a credible messenger organization down the block who's really doing the work. Because we gotta give them credit. They're the ones who at night are talking to directly impacted people. And asking you, what do you need to be successful? That's what we need to expand in. That's right, bro. Speak truth. That's what we need to expand in. So the gang database is a racial tool. There's no way, there's no white gangs in New York State. I've been in prison with Aryan Nation. I've been in prison with Aryan Nation brotherhoods. There are white gangs in this state. Don't let police lie to you and say there isn't no gangs. There's no way. It's only 99% black and brown people.
Talk about it. That's right.
That's a shame. So it doesn't matter if the gang database or whatever it is, cops just want a reason to watch you because you're black and brown.
And cops are the biggest gangs going.
And then what we're saying is that it needs to end. Right. And it's not a if, but, or when. Now. We want to end the gang database now. Not tomorrow. Right. Now.
Ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. The gang database got to go.
For our next speaker, we're going to have Councilmember Alexa Aviles. Hello, everybody. How we doing today? It's a good day to get rid of a useless tool. The gang database. I don't really know what the fascination is in our country with lists. Every time we make lists, they're definitely for nefarious purposes. They're to isolate people. They're to stigmatize people, they're to imprison people, they're to keep them down. So we need to make sure we get rid of all these arbitrary lists that ensures our oppression. And the gang database is definitely one of those things. So you have my commitment, I stand with you, with my community, to
get rid of these useless tools that only serve to oppress our community. There is no safety that results from this kind of list. If there is no due process, there is no sunlight, there is bacteria, bad bacteria that eats at our community. So I'm here to tell you I stand in solidarity. We will work with our colleagues to make sure that they get rid of these kinds of things that serve to oppress our communities and do not serve to uplift. As everybody has said here, we need real investments. We need investments in our humanity and in our dignity. We need investments in our quality education, in our health and well-being. None of this. This costs money. This is basically a profit center for a whole bunch of people to do some meaningless ass work that is just going to lead to our incarceration. So I will work with my colleagues to get rid of this useless database and make sure we are investing properly in our communities. Thank you so much.
Next, we're going to have Jose Chapa. Jose Chapa is a senior policy associate with the Immigrant Defense Project.
Good afternoon. As was mentioned, my name is Jose Chapa. I'm Senior Policy Associate at the Immigrant Defense Project here in New York City. Today, we rally to abolish the NYPD's arbitrary and racist gang database and to call for real community-based solutions. 99% of those tracked in this database in New York City are from communities of color. This, of course, includes immigrants, and our city is home to the largest African, Afro-Caribbean, and Central American immigrant communities in the country. New York City has always been the target of ICE, and under this federal administration, ICE continues to target people arbitrarily deemed public safety threats based on contact with a biased and racist criminal legal system. However, ICE does not do its work alone. ICE's mission statement says that immigrant enforcement, also known as surveillance, detention, and deportation of immigrants, necessitates cooperation with local law enforcement. Databases like New York City's Gang Database, which relies on criteria as vague as the color of clothing, actively identify who ICE will detain and deport. And usually those individuals are young, and usually they're brown and black people. Gang-related exclusions in immigration are used to exclude people from status and target people for deportation. This has a huge impact on young people. You might hear a lot about local and federal government support for Dreamers, but what you don't hear about is how easily localities and ICE collude to exile young people from the country based on gang allegations. ICE operations, such as the 2017 Operation Matador, have long resulted in large sweeps of immigrant youth labeled as gang involved based on very flimsy evidence, resulting in their detention and deportation. Yet, legislators continue to turn their backs on those most easily harmed by these operations. And that includes so many of our black and brown immigrant youth profiled for standing with their friends only for wearing certain colors or certain shoes. This is why it is important to hold cities accountable and have them erase gang databases for our youth and for your immigrant neighbors. As a city, we must not hand over tools for ICE and further harming our communities through aggressive ICE policing that destabilizes our communities with which the gang database does. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah!
For our next speaker, we're going to have Anthony Posada. Anthony Posada is the supervising attorney at the Legal Aid Society's Community Justice Unit.
Yeah!
Peace, everyone.
Peace.
The gang database has got to go. Shame on the NYPD for perpetuating this racist tool that is used to justify sweeping surveillance over black and brown communities. When we talk about the gang database, we need to put it into the context of mass incarceration. It is not an accident that right now there are people on Rikers Island who are there because they were labeled as gang involved. It is by design. It is not an accident that the gang database is 99% non-white. It is by design. It is by design that a prosecutor relied on that label to request higher bail so that somebody could be sent to Rikers Island to languish and be treated in that dehumanizing system.
Are they right?
Right.
It is also not a coincidence that you do not need to commit a crime to be entered into the gang database. We have helped over 500 people submit Freedom of Information Law requests to find out if they were labeled as gang involved. Every single person has been denied.
Are they right?
Every single person has been told that there is no due process for them, that they do not have the right to find out if the NYPD labeled them on the gang database.
Are they right?
No, that ain't right. And we can't stand by a city that protects the NYPD and that actually perpetuates this tool that criminalizes black and brown people for who they hang out with, for what they wear, for the tattoos that they have, for what they put on social media. None of that is right. We live in a city that already has the alternatives to help fight violence. It's called the Crisis Management System. It's called Cure Violence. It's called Credible Messengers. We need to invest in public health solutions, as other people have already pointed out, and not in systems that tear apart our communities. We call on the City Council to pass this bill immediately to abolish the gang database, because our communities cannot wait any longer. Thank you.
Database got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Hey, hey. Ho, ho. The gang database got to go.
Our next speaker is going to be Babe Howell. Babe Howell is a professor of law at the CUNY School of Law and the co-author of a report on the Bronx 120 gang takedown.
Okay. We've heard over and over that the gang database is a tool. It is, but more than that, it's a weapon. It's a weapon. It's a label based on what you look like, who your friends are, where you live, that takes away your rights. It's a weapon that turns us against our own children, our own community members. They try to tell you, oh, there's a dangerous gang member out there, or a crew member, or a drill. Just your friendships are enough. It's 3 or more people who they say are associated. It is a secret list, so if they're telling you this is for your safety, how does this help? You're not telling anyone, hey, we got an eye on you. Hey, let's help these kids, let's do something. It is a weapon. And it is also a weapon to buy your complacence, to buy your investment in the notion that we have a serious youth gang problem. What we have is a serious failure to protect our youth and to invest in our youth and to use the structures and alternatives that can help them.
Right.
We need to abolish the gang database today. We need to divest from all kinds of gang policing and prosecutions, and we need to invest in our kids. New York City can be the first to do this. They use these databases across the country. No notice, no criminality. What you post on social media, they put you in there. It's 99% black and brown. We need to end this now, today, and others will follow. Thank you.
Our next speaker is going to be Nina Lashkagan. Nina is an associate with the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, aka STOP.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone out here today. We're here to make sure our city leaders know that we don't want to invest in surveillance technology because it is unproven, ineffective, and discriminatory. Before I get into talking about the gang database, I just want to say if you've been motivated by what you've heard so far, after you leave here today, you should call your city council member and ask them, do they support Intro 360, the bill to abolish the gang database? And why should we abolish it? Let me tell you why. The NYPD Gang Database, it's dangerous, it's harmful, it's racist, and it does not work to make anyone safer. When it comes to being deemed a gang member, the bar is low and the stakes are extremely high. The database endangers communities, it threatens lives. There's a lot we don't know about the database because the police, when they use it, they're operating in the shadows. But what we do know is that New Yorkers who end up on the database will be deported, arrested, and potentially even in the worst of cases, killed. Police data sharing means a gang database entry can upend a New Yorker's life. And the scariest part is that the NYPD secrecy blocks us from seeing all the consequences. An OIG report was promised to us years ago. After 4 years of alleged investigation, the OIG still hasn't released any findings.
That's right. Is that right?
The database is discriminatory. As people have talked about, the criteria used to get someone on the database are biased and they're overbroad. This means someone could be ending up in the database because of an emoji they used, rap lyrics they posted, anything they posted on social media. And with the result being that over 98% of the people in the database are non-white, this means that the criteria are biased, and we know that. The real reason for an entry is more likely the color of someone's skin, the community they belong to.
Right.
This means that the database criminalizes friendships and it imagines threats where they do not exist. Again, making no one safer. This is the surveilling of friendship networks and creating guilt by association. And as everyone has spoken to, what this means is that New Yorkers of color are going to be put on the database for behavior that would never ever be questioned in their white neighbors. They are monitored for who they know, what they wear, where they live, and how they express themselves. The unscientific system gets it wrong, and when it does, New Yorkers suffer. Like stop and frisk before it, this is just a digital version. It is not working, it is ripping communities and families apart, and is making no one safer. Police-centered intervention methods cannot address crime. Surveillance technology in the hands of the NYPD only endangers New Yorkers, and it gives vulnerable communities more cause to distrust the police. We want our money to be going towards the resources and services that can actually root out violence, working with communities. We don't want it to be going towards pseudoscience spy tools. Thank you. And again, if you're motivated by what you're hearing, call your council member, ask them to sponsor Intro 360. And thank you to the sponsors already.
Next, we're gonna have Dennis Flores. Dennis Flores is formerly gang affiliated and co-founder of El Grito.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dennis Flores. I am with El Grito. Back in the early 1991, I was 16 years old when I went to prison for, making a mistake. And for that mistake, I did time in prison, right? I was in the system, and I began a process to be educated by other inmates, by elders. And I was taken under the wing, and I got involved with Asociación Pro Derecho de Confinado, NYETA, a pro-inmates rights organization that advocated for the betterment, for the protection of rights of inmates. And it was because of that affiliation and being active with the NYETAs that I was placed on a gang database. A few years later, in 1995, after coming out of prison, I was involved, I continued to be involved, continued to be active, and we were recruited by members of the Young Lords Party, right? Richie Perez, Panama Alba. These elders, just like us, were part of a gang in the 1960s and 70s that got politicized, that got active in their community. And they turned that around and became part of the Young Lords Party and fought for revolutionary change. So in the 1990s, they recruited us, the NYETAs, the Latin Kings, the Zulu Nation, and a bunch of other street organizations. And we began to get active in social justice and protesting against police brutality. And because of that, we began to get surveilled by the police. Our lives were turned upside down. There wasn't surveillance by the police prior to us becoming active in social justice. It was because we got involved. It was because of that activism that then we became a threat. They didn't give a shit about us if we were out there fighting each other, killing each other. But when we began to organize against police abuse and support parents who their kids were murdered by police, that's when the surveillance intensified.
Is that right?
They went after us. If we were spitting on the sidewalk, we were riding a bicycle on the sidewalk. If we were jaywalking, we went to jail. We kept on, this happened for years and it intensified. And we were heavily infiltrated and they began to disband and push apart the organizing that was happening. And that is the counterintelligence program. That is a tactic that is used by the police, by the federal government to disband organizations that fight for social justice and change. Right. So a few years later, after that, 10 years later, I was brutally beaten by the police in the train station. And I filed a complaint with the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and it was through that investigation that I was able to get documentation of me being put on a list, on a gang database. And this is where the paper trail began for me, where I began to have evidence of what the police were doing to us. And again, it was because they didn't give a shit about us if we kill each other. They just wanted to put us under the jails. They wanted to disband us. And it was because gang members, so-called gang members, wanted to change, wanted to turn their lives around, and wanted to organize and contribute to society. So it doesn't matter if you change your life, if you turn around, if you want to participate in society, we're always going to be labeled gang members. And they just don't want us to be credible in our communities, even if we're fighting for change. So again, I'm part of the same cause here to end this, erase this gang database, because this is a weapon, as was clearly stated here, to destroy our community. Thank you.
Yeah!
Next up, we're going to have Rennie Smith. Rennie Smith is the Executive Director of Families and Friends of the Wrongfully Convicted.
Yeah!
Speaking. Good afternoon to everyone. I would just like to begin by thanking this coalition for inviting me here. I am a victim of a wrongful conviction. I served 27 years in prison for a crime I did not commit. I know what injustice looks like. My presence here today is a show of solidarity that our organization stands with this gang coalition to help abolish this gang database.
Yeah!
Right. This gang database, like many of you already attest to, is nothing more than a label that's placed on Black and Hispanic communities to do what? To criminalize our community. And once that happens, you know what? That opens the door for police officers, like somebody said earlier, who don't live in our community, to come in and harass, brutalize, and in many cases kill our youth. We're standing against that today. If my grandkids are wearing a certain color, or live in a certain neighborhood, or socialize with a particular group of people, they should not be subject to be placed on the gang database. In June of 2018, then New York City Chief Detective Jeremy Shea testified before a hearing at City Hall in Manhattan. His testimony was very disturbing. Many of y'all spoke about it. He stated that 99% of the people in this database are Blacks and Hispanics. 64% are Blacks. 65% are non-Hispanic whites. And 10% are non-Hispanic Blacks. This is disturbing. And this is what we speak to today. He also spoke about there's 1,460 people who are in this database who are under the age of 18 years old.
Not right?
This amounts to nothing more than racial profiling. And we stand again to say no more. Say no more.
No more.
We must stop these racist policies that are designed to keep our youth further back. When a youth is placed on a gang database, that's a life sentence for them, because they never could get out of there. I don't know if many of y'all know that. So this is what we got to stop this from happening, and we got to continue to come here. Somebody said, how long are we going to be here until these policies, these racist policies, are changed? Thank you.
That's right. Yeah.
Next, we're going to have Luis Bolanos Ordonez. Luis is a civil rights union organizer for Brooklyn, New York.
Yeah.
afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Luis, civil rights union organizer with Vocal New York. I'm happy to be here. We're here because of this secret list. And it's made out of folks, young people like I was. Hopefully I still look like. And they're about the same color as I am, or darker. And there is a big ass problem. What I can offer is the immigrant perspective. Any generation. You know, pretend you, your family or yourself came from another country that is with a lot of political instability, violence, poverty, not because black or brown people can't run a country, but because of US imperialism. Decades upon decades of that bullshit, right? Including the bullshit racist war on drugs, right? And the police or armed violence workers protect the property of these big capitalist cats outside of the US and inside of the US as well. And so you find yourself or your family migrating, if it's my case, in a Latinx community, in a hood in Queens, with very little social services, very little opportunities, like a walk-ass education, a new language, racism, sometimes built within the system, but sometimes outside as well. You got like these old buildings with rats, with lead paint, with mold, climate injustice, record-breaking asthma in young people, and you hang out with the people that are around you, people like yourself. And because of, you know, you find the company of people within your community for protection, to make some money, because sometimes you need to sell some illegal substances to make a little money. And you also need protection because, like my brother said over there, maybe the worst gang in this city is the ones in blue. Smugly looking at us over there.
You ran them off, Lou. You ran them off.
That's right.
And then, if you take in social media the wrong picture, you dress the wrong colors, you know, you end up in this bullshit ass list. And what that means is that you're gonna be harassed, you're gonna be prosecuted in really, really messed up ways. You're gonna probably be put in front of a plea deal when you don't even, may never in your life have the money to actually, you know, have a good legal defense or a bail amount that is crazy. My point is, and insult to injury, being on the gang database also prevents you from getting into NYCHA, public housing.
Is that right?
So what that shit is the system is designed to make you fall. Generations before you. And when you fall, they come and they kick you in the face. So, this is the opposite. This bullshit ass gang database is the opposite of public safety. It's got nothing, I mean, precision policing, that's an oxymoron. It's just plain old oppression. And abolishing this database is just the first step, because we also need to provide services and a good infrastructure for all people. But we gotta first get the knee out of our necks. And with that, hey, hey, ho, ho, the gang database got to go.
Can y'all hear me? Yeah. All right, so when I say people, you say power. People. Power. People. Power. When I say people, you say power. People. Power. People. Power. My name is Darren Mack. I'm a co-director at Freedom Agenda. Freedom Agenda is a member-led organization that's dedicated to organizing people and communities directly impacted by incarceration to achieve decarceration and system transformation. And we stand together. We stand shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm with the Gangs Coalition. Everything that was said, we absolutely agree. It's two things I want to say to keep for people to keep it in mind. One is that the gang database has a use, which is criminalization. It has a use, criminalization. And two, I want to echo what the brother said about the history of COINTELPRO. Right here in New York, they had a unit in the NYPD called BOSS, B-O-S-S. The Bureau of Special Services that collaborated with the FBI and the CIA to neutralize movements and organizations in the city. And that's what the gang database is basically evolving to do. He said that once street formations are politicized, they become a force. A force for change. And that's what the gang database will basically will be used to criminalize and to neutralize and to assassinate our youth, assassinate our leaders. That's the purpose. It's they lining it up. They lining it up. So we stand with the Gang Database Coalition. We stand with the Gang Coalition to end this gang database this year. And then after that, we want all of those resources that the NYPD utilized to operate that system to go back into our communities. We not only should have summer youth programs, we should have fall youth programs, winter youth programs, spring youth programs. The money is there. Redistribute those resources to our communities, and we need to build power. We need to build people power in order to make this thing happen. It's not going to happen on its own by good faith. We can't wait till it's one of our children that's impacted by this gang database to get involved. Get involved with an organization. You have to be connected to an organization to build people power. When I say people, you say power. People. Power. People. Power. When I say people, you say power. People. Power. People. Power. Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Councilmember Sandy Nurse.
Oh, okay. Hi everyone, how you doing? Hey. My name is Sandy Nurse. I'm a council member in the Northeast Brooklyn section. And thank you, first of all, for inviting me to stand with your coalition. Really honored to be here. This tool, this weapon that's being used for hyper-surveillance of our young Black, our young Latino, our young brown youth, it has to be abolished. And it has to be abolished this year by the City Council. You know, we had Public Safety Committee hearings this year, and I asked, you know, how much money, how much personnel is going to social media monitoring, tracking? How much time are you putting on scrolling Facebook and scrolling these platforms? And what is the criteria in which you are even looking at people? Nothing, no answers, no follow-up. We asked, do you let people know when they're off the database? No answers. How often do you review the database? Periodically. So this tool, this database has no transparency, it has no accountability, and they don't even respect our ability to hold this program accountable with any type of oversight because they won't even provide any answers for us. And in that case, it absolutely has to go. It absolutely has to go. So I don't want to repeat what everyone said. I just want to thank you all for the work you do. I stand with you all. I believe this has to be a priority of the council this year. I believe that we do have enough people who are committed to this. We need to grow more, so I echo the sentiments of call your member. Find out why they're not on this bill. And build. Get involved in an organization. Let's grow this so that we can fill up the steps and we can actually pass this year. So thank you so much for including me, and I stand with you all. Thank you.
Next, we're gonna have Tatiana Hill, community organizer. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I've been an organizer for years, and I'm now here today also representing Senator Jabari Brisport's office as a constituent advocate. I fight against the system of criminal justice reform because it is not just for our people. Black and brown people are constantly targeted by NYPD and by this criminal justice system and given inadequate support and uplifting and care, and then they're pushed into these methods of violence that have been exemplified by America for centuries. Any violence we have in our community was taught to us by our oppressor. Anything we do to one another, we've been shown for years and years to do to each other because we don't show that we have value to one another, because this system doesn't show us that we're valuable. Our lives are not meaningful in these systems. And therefore, our children, our youth, our people go to gangs for family support, for community, for uplifting. And yes, they create harm. But what are we doing to address that? Are we punishing people, locking them up, throwing away the key? Are we abusing them further? Are we teaching them what love and compassion looks like? What transformative justice looks like? How it looks to have a conversation with a person that caused harm so the harm doesn't happen again and again. You're actually stopping it from ever happening again. Not just punishing people and throwing them away and forgetting about them, but addressing the trauma that they face to get them where they're at this moment. We as a people keep talking about we want safety, we want to change our communities, but what are we doing to really create that? How are we advocating for our neighbors that are someone who may be problematic and they're in the gang, but they're still a person? They have a story, they have so many pieces of their lives that are missing that we're not addressing as a community. We're not giving them the love and care that they're not getting at home. They live in poverty, they don't have housing, they don't have food, they don't have education, and we're not addressing those things. We're putting money into the NYPD's bloated budget so they can stand around and police us and harass us and constantly throw us into systems that further eradicate our systems and communities that we built for ourselves. We have to fight for more, we have to push. Like everyone is saying, we have to join these organizations and speak out. We have to talk to our city council members, we have to talk to our senators, we have to talk to our elected officials so that they can get legislation in place to support the things that we need to change what's happening to our people. We all stand together and we have power as a unit. If we stand divided, if we keep putting blame on one another for harm, we're not going to fix that harm. We're going to keep complaining about what's happening without really addressing the root causes of things. I stand here with so many amazing organizers I've seen over the years do powerful and amazing things because they speak out, because they go out and make change in their community. All of us have the power to do that. We have to have these conversations that are hard to have. We have to talk about harm as well as addressing the harm. We have to talk about the families who are victims as well as the people who created that harm too, because they have been victimized at some point in their lives, time and time again. If we show care, it has to be across the board to everyone in our community. If we show that we want to work to fight to change our communities, it has to be through a lens of love and compassion. Otherwise, we will never get to a place of safety and justice, true justice for Black and brown people. Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Solomon Osavado from the Public Advocate's Office.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. My name is Solomon Osavado. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Deputy Public Advocate for Justice, Health, Equity, and Safety underneath the Honorable Jumani D. Williams, who cannot be here today, so I'm here speaking on his behalf. Jumani was originally the sponsor of the first bill that was requiring transparency for the database, but obviously that wasn't enough. And so we're glad that we're supporting a legislation that would end dehumanization for young Black and brown people in this city, once and for all. And it's already been stated here that this gang database is an extension of counterintelligence programming that reinforces a history of a slavery that moves people into a system of mass incarceration with no compassion, no rehabilitation, no transformation. And that's why we have to stop this today. This is not an abstract concept as it's been told today. It's not like, oh, there's a list in place and it could be a danger to people, like a theory. This is an active weapon that's being used to put kids in jail right now. Right now there's hundreds of gun cases where there is no evidence. But the things that are keeping young people locked up, not able to make bail, is part of their association with what people are calling gangs, right? And it's for this reason that we have to be mindful of who is being attacked by this, because it's young black and brown people, and who's getting away with corruption that leads to murder. A few weeks ago, an officer was found reenacting the seizure of a gun. How is that even possible? And these are the type of tactics that are enabled by things like gang databases, which target individuals and make them the prey for a system that's designed to destroy not only one life, but all of the lives connected to that individual. And that's why it's important that we have to stand up today and work to not get transparency, but eliminate the weapon that causes dehumanization, that creates the system that's a pipeline to put young black and brown people in prison today. And it has to stop. We need to decarcerate. We need to stop holding people who are associated with gangs without being able to have release. We need more alternatives that allow individuals to touch base with community-led safety efforts that are actually transform their lives. We need healing, justice, and we need truth. So hey, hey, ho, ho, the gang database got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go. Thank you.
One last time, hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go, hey, hey, ho, ho. The gang database got to go, hey, hey. Ho, ho! The gang database got to go!
And one thing that I say is, like, when it comes to any type of community policing, it's not working. Community policing means that you're actually knowing what community leaders are, community business owners, and they're not even doing that from the beginning. So how do you actually know what creates safety or safety for us when you haven't even talked to us? It's like you know, this is what we tell you what we need, and that's not being met. You know what I'm saying? So how are you telling us what is safety if you don't even know who we are? Yeah, I mean, you know, I think there has to be a way for, you know, even effective policing to work. It's for them to work with reentry organizations, keep working with Cure Violence and take their lead, keep working with organizations that meets the needs of the individuals that they're criminalizing or watching. You know what I'm saying? Because I know most of the time when I have conversations with these individuals that police officers are either scared to have conversations with or don't even have the tools to actually impact or talk to these people, is that when I have a conversation with them, it's like, I need a job. I need, you know, I need the abilities to have trainings. There needs to be exposed opportunity for our communities. And these opportunities are not going to be met by police officers. They say it all the time, even when it comes to mental health. They can't even, you know, this is not their field. So this is why it's important for us to look at other alternative abilities to deal with violence in our community. And we know it. It's resources, resources, and resources.
How would you counter police claims that these types of databases are keeping communities safer?
I think that it addresses individual crime, maybe here and there, but it's not stopping crime from happening. It's not stopping the reasonings behind why people commit certain types of crime. It's also very particular to individuals. There's so many things happening in so many different neighborhoods and different levels, but it's not being addressed because they're focusing on this laser point list of people. So if you watch individuals, instead of really opening up spaces for safety and conversations to happen, you're not really addressing what's going on inside of homes, inside of communities and neighborhoods, and you're not changing the mindset. Like, the mindset is why crime happens, not the reality of what we see in front of us. That's like the top of the pyramid. Sorry, my phone is like...
What would effective policing in New York City?
Police as it stands is historically racist, so we have to abolish what that is. It has to come from a community aspect. A lot of police officers come from Staten Island, Long Island, upstate, sometimes even. They're not of and part of the community. They don't know the history. They don't know their neighbors. So if you watch the child grow up, you may have a different sense of compassion towards him behaving badly versus you coming in, you see a historically, racially black, violent person and you think they're doing something bad and dangerous and you want to punish them. If I'm your neighbor and I know you and I know your family and your history, I want to help you and I want to stop you from doing that thing, but also talk to you. You know, we talk about gentle parenting now, right? Like, that's the new thing. And that means you're coming from a place of love and wanting to heal, not just yell at them, punish them. And we have to think of policing in that same way. But it shouldn't be policing as it stands currently, because that is not going to accomplish equity, and that's what we need in our communities.
It's clear that this database is mostly compiling profiles and information on black and brown people. White gangs exist. They exist in the prison system. They're out here. There's white supremacist gangs that exist. There's all kinds of gangs, but they're not, there's the mafia, the Italian mob, right? Not to stereotype the entire Italian community, but they exist. They're not being profiled. They're not being listed. They commit crimes, but the only ones that seem to be appearing on the list are people of color.
And how would you counter the police claims that these types of lists make communities safer?
Well, you know, the reality is that, you know, especially young people make mistakes, and they should be allowed to go on with their lives. You know, so arbitrarily, they're just putting a blanket on everyone, you know, and you necessarily don't have to have committed a crime to appear on this database. You don't have to have be convicted of a crime. You're guilty by association, and association is vague. You can shake the hand of someone who's an alleged gang member. You could be a friend on social media. They could be a family member. You know, you could throw a stone and, you know, you're gonna hit a gang member in our community, because this is what it is. This is a reality, but that doesn't mean that, you know, everyone should be tagged, you know, as criminals. And then people also change and turn their lives around. But for me, and in my experience, this has been a weapon to profile, to target, and to disband even groups that try to turn around. And you could stay there forever. I'm now 47 years old, and I'm no longer active in a gang, but I'm still in this database. And it's because of my organizing, being involved in organizing against police brutality, you know? And what does that have to do with gangs? Absolutely nothing.
One more question. What would effective policing in New York City look like to you?
Effective policing? I don't think that there's going to be effective policing under the system that exists. You know, the police department doesn't. They can't police themselves. You know, they don't weed out the bad apples. You know, so when they protect bad cops, when there's a blue wall of silence, when, you know, so-called good cops or cops that try to do the right thing get pushed out, get punished, get disciplined because they want to challenge systemic racism in the police department, then they don't want good cops. They don't want cops to try to do things right. So, you know, when they punish cops who whistleblow, who bring out evidence of ticket and arrest quotas that they're forced to do because, you know, those are the mandates, then there's never going to be effective policing.
Over the last couple of years, the gang database was fully operational. There were more people on it than, as far as we know, had ever been on it. Putting people on a list doesn't make anyone safer. Oftentimes, after large-scale gang takedowns, there's only a momentary lowering of violence, and then violence continues because the root causes of violence are socioeconomic. reasons related to poverty and people's social conditions, and policing has never been able to solve that. There's actually no empirical evidence that policing itself, overall, whether gang databases or stops or any other police method, reduces violence in the long term. It's a temporary measure that usually comes with the added cost of many people being unnecessarily arrested, unnecessarily convicted, put away, wrongfully convicted, sometimes completely framed for things that they didn't do, or included in indictments for things that other people may have done. So there's no evidence, and there never has been, that a list makes people safer. What makes people safer are investments in communities, poverty alleviation, all of the things that will keep people out of situations where they feel like they have to do harm to themselves or others.
One more question. What would effective policing in New York City look like to you?
Effective policing would be less is more. So the less policing, but that comes with using the costs that are saved from policing and police officers, and using that to actually improve conditions that will actually, at the root cause, reduce violence. That's the best form of policing. Less is more, and in fact, many of us believe none is more. Policing really won't make us safer, at least in the long term. And policing is not necessarily the solution in of itself. It's how do you reduce violence, and that's a different conversation than policing itself. Policing is what we've always done. And sometimes when you keep banging your head against the wall, sometimes it's time to stop banging your head against that same wall and actually do something different. In the case of New York City, what we need to do is put a lot of the resources from policing and put them into community-based organizations, poverty alleviation, jobs programs, school funding, after-school funding, community programs. All of the things that people know in their heart of hearts that will actually get young people and get people who have issues off of the wrong path and being positive members of society.
Who are they specifically targeting with these databases?
Black and brown communities. Black and brown communities as a whole. They might say that they targeting specific people just causing danger, but it's not true. They targeting black and brown, the whole community. Primarily the young people, people in their 20s and teens, even younger.
And how would you counter police claims when they say that these databases make communities safer?
That's a lie.
It's a lie. You see it in the physical form. It's not doing anything to help. It's not doing anything to change the community. It's just implementing and accusing young black and brown brothers and sisters that they're criminals when they ain't even commit a crime yet. So you basically putting a title on them without them even doing anything. So it's really not helping, it's making things worse. Because now you have parents that have to know that their child may be targeted going outside, not just from the youth and the community, but also the police officers. That's the ones that are supposed to protect the community. So it's really not doing no change, it's not helping. If you ask any police officer right now, how does it help and how did it help, they wouldn't be able to show you anything. They just say statistics,
Yeah.
But it's nothing.
Yeah, and even if you was gonna look at their statistics and whatnot, like you look at the fact that gun violence has gone up this year, and yet with the new mayor, we've had like almost 20 gang raids so far this year since he first started. He started off his administration by raiding people in Fort Greene projects. And then all he's really doing is creating more people and putting more people in a criminal mindset. Because when you go and you snatch people up who are potentially innocent, because majority of the time when they snatch people up in these raids, like the vast majority of people they get haven't done anything. And so now you take these people away from their homes for about a year or two, right, where they gotta fight their case from Rikers Island or wherever. And then after that, now their families are struggling at home, they lost their jobs, they might even lose their housing. They come back because of permanent exclusion in NYCHA. You can't be in your home or else NYCHA will evict the entire family. So they gotta hide the fact that you're there. So you create a situation where you're just pushing people more into criminality in order to survive. And not only that, what are these people gonna do once they're inside for protection? The gang that these people are claiming that they're a part of, they're gonna be actually a part of it now. You know what I mean? So
it doesn't help, it just makes it worse.
And what would effective policing in New York City look like to you guys?
Actual police officers from that specific community, that know the community, that interact with the community, know the mothers, know the fathers, know the brothers, the sisters, the kids, the the neighbors, the business owners, to where it's more of a family thing. Where,
accountability.
Right, it's easy for the officers to speak, it's either for the youth to trust those officers, for the community to trust the officers, and like you said, accountability. Yeah. Once police officers start putting their own officers on the front line and saying, you broke the law, you have to deal with this and be accountable, it's never going to be a change. You can't tell us we have to follow the law, but you guys break the law. It's just a contradiction. And once, as long as that happens, there'll never be a trust or a belief that there's any opportunity or American dream. It's like it's a bold-faced lie, and you want us to believe that lie. You know, and that's decades.
And the only way to get to where he's talking about is for the community to have control. Because the state's not going to do it on its own. So I believe that the community should have control of the police budget, of the staffing, of their leadership, of their priorities, and the community should be able to control their own security at the same time. Because not everything requires a police presence. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it should be reserved for the most egregious of cases. Other than that, the community can solve their problems if given the tools and resources. But beyond that, I think the community should be in control of all the institutions